The mercy granted the stars were silent that night, but silence in space always carried a weight. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence before a storm. Across the void, the ships of the Galactic Council moved like shadows, hulls glowing with power. Every world knew what it meant when the Council's fleet appeared at your door. It meant judgment. It meant fire. It meant the end. Earth was small, forgotten, and fragile compared to the great empires of the galaxy. Its people were new to the stars, still learning, still stumbling. Yet somehow, humanity had managed to irritate the Council. Whispers claimed humans were too ambitious, too loud, too stubborn. One day, their ships crossed a line they should not have crossed. And the Council came. The meeting was short, the words sharp. Aliens of dozens of races sat in their great chamber, debating whether Earth should live or die. To most, it was simple. Humanity was young, reckless, and dangerous. Destroy them now, and the galaxy would never have to worry again. The vote was almost certain until one voice spoke. A single elder from the Sarati, a race older than most stars, raised her hand. Her name was Aurealis, and her voice carried calm. "Let us not kill them," she said. "Let us grant them mercy once." The chamber erupted with shock and anger. Mercy was weakness. Mercy was danger. But Aurealis continued. "If we end them now, we will be feared as monsters," she said. "If we give them mercy, perhaps they will learn gratitude. Perhaps they will remain small." The vote shifted. Not by much, but enough. Humanity was spared. The Council decided Earth would live, but with chains. Humans were ordered never to expand beyond their solar system. Their ships would be watched, their colonies forbidden. Any violation would mean destruction without another chance. It was mercy, yes, but it was also humiliation. On Earth, leaders gathered in secret chambers. The news was bitter, yet no one dared to speak of rebellion. Instead, they bowed their heads and thanked the Council for its kindness. The cameras showed smiles, but behind the walls of stone and steel, the truth was different. They had been given mercy once, but humans knew what it meant. It meant the galaxy saw them as weak. It meant they were a mistake waiting to be erased. But humans remembered. They remembered the fleets that surrounded their world, ready to burn it. They remembered the vote, so close to their end. They remembered the face of Aurealis, the alien, who spoke for mercy, and they swore they would never forget. Years passed, and Earth obeyed. The Council watched and saw nothing but quiet progress. Humans rebuilt their cities, sent small ships into orbit, and lived as if they had accepted their fate. The galaxy looked away, believing the lesson had been learned. But beneath mountains, beneath oceans, behind hidden doors, something else was happening. Humanity was not broken. Humanity was preparing. A boy named Elias stood on the balcony of his city home one night. He looked at the sky, at the stars the Council had forbidden him to touch. His father told him stories of that day when Earth almost burned. "Never forget," his father whispered. "Mercy is a gift, but also a chain." Elias listened, and like every child of his generation, he carried the story in his heart. They were the children of mercy, but they would not be prisoners forever. In hidden places, engineers worked in silence. They studied scraps of alien technology. They tore apart crashed ships and learned secrets. Never meant to be theirs, they built not for today, but for tomorrow. Each bolt, each engine, each weapon was forged with a single promise. One day, humanity would rise, not with anger, but with strength, not to erase the mercy given, but to repay it in a way no one could ignore. And so the legend began, not with war, not with fire, but with mercy. The galaxy thought mercy would chain humanity. Instead, it planted a seed that would grow in silence, in shadows, in the shadows. Hearts of every human born after that day, the spark had been lit. And sparks, in time, always find fuel, as Earth slept under the watch of the Council's fleets. The stars themselves seemed to whisper. Mercy had been given, but one day, the galaxy would learn what that mercy had created. Not weakness, not surrender, but something else. Something far more dangerous. A legend waiting to be forged. Asterisk the silent preparation. The years after Mercy looked quiet on the surface. But silence is not always peace. Sometimes silence is the mask of patience, the sound of something waiting to break free. And Earth, the world the galaxy thought was chained, had never been more alive. The Council's fleets still came and went, their ships patrolling near the edge of the solar system. To them, Earth was harmless, contained, a child locked in its room, but they did not see what lay beneath the oceans, what lay under the mountains, what lay in the shadows. For humanity had learned a lesson older than war itself. If you cannot fight today, then you prepare for tomorrow. In Antarctica, under the ice where no alien scanners could reach, a vast chamber pulsed with light. Engines hummed, metal glowed, and men and women worked in silence. They called it Project Ashen Sky. It was no single ship, no single weapon, but a network of hidden forges across the earth. Each piece looked harmless when alone, but together they were building a storm. Children grew up with whispers of the silent oath. It was not spoken in public, but passed in hushed tones from parents to children. Remember the mercy. They said, remember the chains. Every child who heard those words knew that life under watchful eyes was only temporary. One day, the spark would burn brighter, and they must be ready. On Mars, under the red dust, another secret base grew. The Council had forbidden colonies, but Mars was not called a colony. It was called a research outpost, small, weak. Nothing to worry about. Yet inside, its caverns stretched for miles, filled with tunnels, foundries, and shipyards. The Martian night carried the sound of drills of hammers, of engines meant for a war no one had declared Elias now grown into. A man walked those caverns with quiet determination. He had become one of the hidden architects, one of the planners. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with the memory of his father's words. Every time he looked at the blue star of Earth from Mars, he remembered the day humanity was nearly erased, and he promised himself he would never allow it again. Yet even as Earth prepared, shadows spread across the galaxy. Not everyone trusted. The Council's mercy. Alien traders spoke of strange human demands, rare metals, forbidden crystals, and weapons-grade fuel. Smugglers carried crates into human ports and left with heavy purses but heavier doubts. One Zirithi smuggler whispered to another, "They build something they do not want us to see." But the Council laughed, believing humans were too small to threaten the stars. Then came the test. One quiet night in the belt, near the forgotten rocks of Ceres, a human ship drifted. It looked ordinary, a mining vessel with rust and scars. But inside, it carried an engine unlike any seen before. The design was human, but the power was something new, something faster, sharper, alive. When it lit the void, the ship jumped across the belt in an instant. The crew stood in silence, knowing they had just broken the first chain. Back on Earth, leaders of the Hidden Alliance gathered in the deep chambers of Geneva. Maps of the stars glowed on the table, each marked with secret colonies, supply, routes, and hidden caches. They spoke not of rebellion, but of inevitability. Mercy will not protect us forever. One general said, his voice steady, when the Council tires of patience, they will come again, and they will not leave until Earth burns. Silence filled the chamber until Elias spoke. Then let us make sure when they come, they find not prey but predators. Every hand agreed, every voice swore the same oath. Earth would not wait to die. Earth would prepare to live. And so the silent years became the forge years. Ships built in secret, weapons tested in shadows, knowledge stolen and remade. What the Council thought was quiet obedience was, in truth, the heartbeat of a rising storm, But storms cannot stay hidden forever. One patrol ship of the Council drifted too close to the dark side of the moon. Its scanners caught a glimpse of metal where no metal should be. It sent a signal before it vanished into silence. The message was short, broken, filled with static, but one word was clear: humans. A council dismissed it, but seeds of fear had been planted. Some asked questions, some dismissed them. But the whispers grew. Had mercy been a mistake? Was the spark they spared about to turn into fire? And deep below earth, in the ice, in the ice, in the ice, stone, in the hidden forges, humanity worked faster. Every hand knew the truth. Every heart carried the weight. Mercy had saved them once, but next time it would not. When the council came again, Earth would not bow. Earth would rise, and the galaxy would learn what silence had been hiding. Asterisk. The first clash did not begin with war. It began with greed, far beyond Mars, where miners searched the belt for scraps of stone and metal. A human convoy drifted quietly to the galaxy. It was nothing but another fragile fleet, slow and harmless. But to raiders, it was prey. The raiders came without warning, their ships painted with the scars of piracy. They had plundered worlds before, worlds stronger than Earth. And when they saw the human convoy, they laughed easy. Spoils, their leader hissed. They are still children playing with ships. Their guns lit the void on the human bridge. Captain Reese stood calm. He had been waiting for this moment. The convoy was not defenseless. Among the mining ships floated a single vessel, plain and gray, its hull scarred on purpose to look weak. But beneath its skin lay the first child of the Forge years. The ship was called Resolute. The raiders fired first, beams tearing toward the convoy. But the Resolute moved in a way no human ship had ever moved before. It twisted, slid, and burned with impossible speed. Engines that should not exist carried it across the void in blinding flashes. The raiders blinked in confusion, then fear. Human ships. "Do not move like that," one whispered. The Resolute answered not with words, but with fire. Its cannons unleashed streams of light, not alien, not stolen, but human-made. Weapons designed in silence, tested in shadows. One raider ship vanished. In an instant, torn apart before its crew could scream. The others staggered, turning to flee, but the Resolute hunted them. Every shot was precise, every strike merciless, and in minutes what had begun as prey became predator. The battle ended in silence, the raiders destroyed, their leader's last words echoing into the dark. They were not supposed to be this strong. The human crew sat in stunned silence too. For years they had prepared in shadows, but now, for the first time, they had shown their teeth. News spread faster than light. The belt was full of eyes, full of whispers, full of tongues eager to carry stories across the stars. And the story was this: humans had killed raiders with impossible weapons. They had fought not as prey, but as hunters. The legend was no longer a secret. At the Galactic Council, chaos filled the chamber. Some laughed, dismissing the reports as lies. Others grew pale, remembering the vote long ago. Mercy was a mistake, one counselor spat. They were supposed to stay small. Aurealis, the elder Serati who had once spared humanity, closed her eyes. She had feared this moment would come. For mercy, once given, is never forgotten. And humans were a race that remembered everything. Back on Earth, Captain Reese stood before a secret gathering of leaders. The Resolute had returned, scarred but alive. He placed a recording on the table. The final moments of the battle. The alien ships breaking, the human cannons blazing, the silence afterward. No one in the chamber spoke for a long time. And Elias, now one of the chief architects of humanity's hidden rise, whispered the words everyone already felt. The first chain is broken, but victory brought danger. If the Council had ignored humanity before, they would not ignore them now. The raid was small, yes, But the galaxy would not forget the sight of raiders destroyed by a weak world. And questions would be asked. How long had humans been? Preparing, what else were they hiding? How far had they already come? Elias stood at the center of the chamber and raised his hand. This is only the beginning, he said. The galaxy thinks we are still weak, still bound by mercy. He looked into the eyes of every leader, every soldier, every scientist. We will show them that mercy was not a chain. It was a spark, and now that spark is fire. Across the hidden shipyards, work quickened, engines roared, metal rang, and ships rose from the forges one after another. The Resolute was no longer alone. It was the first of many, and humanity knew the galaxy was watching. They would not hide forever. Soon, there would be another clash, and this time, the galaxy itself would hear it. In the shadows of the stars, the first legend was written. A small human ship had turned hunters into prey. A world once spared by mercy had revealed its teeth. And in the silence after battle, one truth began to spread. Mercy toward humanity was no kindness. It was the beginning of a storm. Asterisk the rising fear. The galaxy had always laughed at humans. But laughter began to fade after the first clash. Stories spread like wildfire, carried by traitors, smugglers, and frightened survivors. Whispers told of a single human ship that destroyed an entire raider fleet. Some called it rumor, others called it lies. But deep inside, even the strongest races felt a shiver. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council, silence fell as recordings of the battle played. The images were grainy, but undeniable. A human vessel moving with impossible speed. Alien warships breaking apart in fire. A young species fighting like predators, not prey. Voices rose, sharp and fearful. This cannot be ignored, one counselor hissed. If they could build one ship, they could build more. They were spared once, another growled. We should have ended them then. But Aurealis, the Serati elder who had once given Earth mercy, spoke softly. You see danger, but I see inevitability. She said, mercy planted a seed, and seeds always grow. The council did not listen to wisdom. They listened to fear. A fleet was assembled, not for open war, but for intimidation. Hundreds of ships gathered at the edges of the solar system, their weapons armed. They thought a show of strength would break humanity's will. But they did not understand what humanity had become on Earth. The leaders already knew the council would come. Captain Reese stood beside Elias as reports flooded in. Scouts had seen the council's armada gathering like a storm. The people of Earth did not panic. They prepared every hidden forge, every secret dock. Every underground lab pushed harder, faster, louder. They were no longer just preparing for survival. They were preparing to send a message. At the dark edge of the moon, something stirred. A massive shadow shifted, larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Resolute had been humanity's first hidden weapon. But now the forges had given birth to something greater. A ship so vast it blocked out the stars. It was called Erebus, a silent giant of Earth's vengeance. The Erebus did not look sleek or beautiful like alien designs. It looked brutal, a mountain of steel with cannons like towers. Its hull was layered with strange dark metal that bent light and drank fire. Engines deep within its core thrummed, like the heartbeat of a god. When it moved, entire stations felt the vibration. When it powered up, the void itself seemed to shiver. Elias stood on its bridge, staring at the endless stars. This is not just a ship, he whispered. This is our answer. Beside him, Reese nodded, his voice grim but proud. They will come thinking us weak, and they will see this. And come they did. The council's fleet moved into orbit. A sea of glowing hulls stretching as far as human eyes could see. Alien commanders broadcast their demands across every channel, Earth. Stand down, submit, obey the chains placed upon you. Their voices carried arrogance, but also fear hidden beneath. Humanity did not answer with surrender. The Erebus rose from the moon's shadow, its colossal frame blotting out stars. Every alien ship fell into silence as the giant revealed. Itself, it was larger than their flagships, larger than anything they had ever faced, and it was human. A murmur spread across the alien fleet. "This cannot be," one captain whispered. "They were not supposed to have this power," another gasped. But disbelief did not stop what came next. The Erebus fired once, not a barrage, not an endless storm. Only one cannon spoke. The beam cut through space like a blade of light. An alien cruiser vanished in silence, torn apart as if it had never existed. No wreckage remained, only drifting dust. The alien fleet panicked, weapons armed, formations broken. But the Erebus did not move to slaughter. It simply stood, its vast shadow cast over the Council's fleet like a warning. The message was clear: Earth was no longer chained. Humanity had risen, and the mercy once given had forged a giant. On the Council homeworld, panic echoed through the chambers. Some screamed for war, others whispered of treaties, but Aurealis only closed her eyes and spoke softly. They thought mercy was kindness, but mercy to humans is fire, and fire always spreads. And across the stars, in hidden corners and dark taverns, whispers began, not of weakness, not of chains, but of a new word, a word that would follow humanity forever. Legend, asterisk. The spark ignites the galaxy believed humanity had only one monster, the Erebus. But legends are never born from a single act. Legends spread, multiply, and take root in every corner of history. And humanity had been planting roots for decades, while the Council fleets trembled before the giant in orbit. Another truth emerged. Earth was no longer alone. Hidden colonies, built in silence beyond the reach of alien patrols, revealed themselves. Signals flashed from Titan, from Europa, from the Belt. Every world that was once forbidden now pulsed with life. And each world held its own forge, its own secret army. Elias stood in the command chamber of the Erebus, his eyes fixed on the star maps. Dots of light blinked across the display. These were not Council systems, not alien strongholds. These were human outposts. Entire cities hidden in the dark. He turned to his captains and said quietly, "They thought we were chained, but in the dark we learned to walk." The revelation spread like fire across the galaxy. Traders whispered of human colonies that were supposed to be impossible. Smugglers spoke of fleets rising from shadows. And on distant worlds, oppressed races looked to the stars and began to ask a dangerous question. If humans could rise from chains, why couldn't they? The Council panicked. Calling emergency sessions in their golden chamber, arguments raged, voices shook. "Strike them now. Crush them before they spread further," cried one warlord. "No," countered another, fear in his eyes. "If we strike and fail, the legend will grow beyond control." But even as they argued, humanity moved faster. In the outer dark, near the forgotten stars of Orion's edge, the first human fleet gathered. Not a fleet of scavenged ships, not raider spoils, but vessels forged by human hands, designed by human minds. Each one bristled with weapons no alien had ever seen. Each one carried crews who remembered the story of mercy. They were not fighting for conquest. They were fighting for proof. Proof that humanity would never kneel again. Captain Reese, now commander of the Orion fleet, addressed his people. His voice was steady, but his words burned like fire. "They gave us mercy once, but mercy is not chains, it is fuel," he said. "They thought we would bow, but instead we built. And now the spark they lit in us will set the stars on fire." A first strike came swiftly, not by humans, but against them. A coalition of smaller alien powers, fearful of humanity's rise, sent warships to Orion's edge. They believed humans would scatter, surrender, or beg for peace. But when they arrived, They did not find prey. They found the Orion fleet waiting. The clash was brutal, the void burning with fire. Alien fleets advanced with numbers, but human ships moved with precision. Every cannon, every engine, every strike was part of a design written long before the first battle began. The Resolute was there, the scarred veteran of the first clash. And beside it flew ships, larger, faster, stronger. The aliens fought with rage, but the humans fought with purpose. They were not defending one ship, not defending one world. They were defending a future. The battle ended not with surrender, but with silence. The alien fleet lay shattered, wreckage drifting across the void. Human ships stood unbroken. Their banners lit against the stars, and across the galaxy, the whispers became a roar. Humanity was not a mistake, not a child of mercy. Humanity was becoming a legend, back on Earth. Elias looked into the stars from the bridge of the Erebus. He knew more battles would come, greater fleets, fiercer storms. But in his heart, he also knew the truth. The spark had been ignited, and once a spark becomes fire, no chains can hold it. In the halls of the council, Aurealis rose one final time, her voice tired but strong. "You call them dangerous because you fear them," she said. "But you forget who gave them the seed of this danger. You gave them mercy, and mercy became memory, and memory became fire. They will not stop, not now, not ever." And in the corners of the galaxy, in places far from Earth, the weak and the broken listened. They listened to stories of humans who rose from chains. They listened to tales of ships that turned hunters into prey, and they began to hope. For if mercy had forged a legend once, perhaps that legend could spread to them as well. The galaxy did not yet understand, but it would. The spark was not just Earth's anymore. It was the galaxy's, and it was only the beginning. Asterisk the turning point. The council could no longer deny the truth. The whispers had grown into storms. The spark had become fire, and fire, once lit, spreads faster than fear. Across the galaxy, fleets assembled, not raiders, not small coalitions. This was the Council's armada, the combined strength of empires. Older than Earth itself, thousands of ships, each a fortress, each a weapon of stars. The Council gave only one command: end humanity. The news reached Earth like thunder rolling through the void. Screens across the hidden colonies lit with warnings. The largest armada in history was moving toward them. Some trembled, some prayed, but none surrendered. For this was the day humanity had prepared for, the day mercy had promised. On the bridge of the Erebus, Elias stood with Captain Reese at his side. The great ship's engines pulsed like the heart of a titan. Across the system, the Orion fleet waited. Rows of ships forged in silence, now gleaming with purpose. Elias spoke into the calm. His voice carried to every captain, every soldier, every worker who had built these ships. They come to end us, but they do not know what they created. He said, they gave us mercy once, and from that mercy we built strength. Now we repay them not with surrender, but with legend. The Council's fleet arrived in a wave of light. Stars disappeared behind the wall of ships. The void shook with the weight of their engines. Alien commanders sneered as they prepared to crush a world they still called weak. But their sneers faded when the Erebus rose, and with it, the full might of humanity. The battle began with silence. Then the sky lit like a storm, beams of fire, missiles, and weapons older than Earth itself screamed across the void. The Council unleashed destruction without mercy, but humanity did not break. Their ships twisted, dodged, and countered with weapons no alien had ever imagined. The Erebus led the charge, its cannons tearing holes through cruisers like paper. The Resolute darted through the chaos, its smaller frame striking like a blade. Every human ship fought with a ferocity born not of hatred, but of memory. The memory of almost dying, the memory of chains, the memory of mercy given like a curse, alien. Fleets broke against them. But the council had numbers beyond counting. Wave after wave poured forward, each stronger than the last. Humanity bled, ships cracked, men and women gave their lives in the fire. Still they did not yield, still they did not fall. On the bridge of the Erebus, alarm screamed, the hull shook. Reese gripped the rail, his voice steady even as flames lit the screens. "They think mercy made us soft," he growled, "but mercy made us steel." Elias gave the order no human had ever dared before. "Unleash the core," he said. At the heart of the Erebus, a weapon older than war itself awakened. It was not stolen, not copied, but born from human hands. A weapon that bent light, bent space, bent the void itself. The Erebus fired, not a beam, not a cannon, but a storm that tore reality apart. An entire line of alien battleships vanished in silence. Where they had stood, only drifting dust remained. The void itself seemed scarred by the strike. The council's fleet faltered, commanders shouting in fear. "What have they become?" One cried. "This is not possible." Another screamed. But it was possible. Because mercy had given humans time, and humans had turned time into weapons. Still the council pressed on. The battle raged for hours, stars burning, ships dying, yet with every passing moment, something strange happened. Alien fleets that were. Not council began to hold back. Commanders who once hated humanity now watched in awe. Some even turned their guns, not on humans, but on the council itself. The tide shifted. The council, once invincible, began to break. Their fleet crumbled, their commanders silenced, and as the last great wave fell, silence returned. But it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of history being written. Humanity had not only survived, they had turned the greatest armada the galaxy had ever seen into ashes. The council's authority was shattered, their fear now reality. And across the stars, voices rose, not in laughter, not in doubt, but in reverence. The legend was no longer rumor. It was truth. On the bridge of the Erebus, Elias stood tall, though his body was weary. The stars outside glowed with wreckage, with the graves of thousands. But in his eyes there was only fire. "We were spared once," he whispered, "and they thought it was kindness. But today, we proved mercy does not chain us. Mercy makes us eternal." And in that moment, the galaxy realized the turning point had come. The old order had ended. A new legend had begun. And at the center of it all stood humanity, unbroken, unstoppable, unforgettable. Asterisk. The legend forged. The battle was over, but the void still glowed with fire. Wreckage of the council's fleet drifted like broken stars, where thousands of warships once stood proud. Only silence remained, and in that silence, the galaxy changed. Forever, the council, the power that had ruled for centuries, was broken, their fleets destroyed, their authority shattered, their pride burned to dust. For the first time in history, the council looked small, and humanity, once mocked as children, stood as giants. On the bridge of the Erebus, Elias looked out at the endless field of wreckage. His face was marked with exhaustion, his eyes heavy with loss. Thousands of humans had given their lives in the battle, but their sacrifice had carved a truth into the stars. Humanity could never again be ignored. They had stepped from mercy into legend. Captain Reese stood at his side, his voice quiet but steady. "They will fear us now," he said. "They will call us monsters." Elias shook his head, his voice calm but fierce. "No," he answered. "They will call us what we are. Survivors, builders, legends." Across the galaxy, the message spread. Alien races once silent under council rule began to whisper of rebellion. Worlds that had known chains for generations now looked to Earth, not as victims, not as prey, but as hope. They saw a young race rise from nothing, endure humiliation, survive mercy, and return with fire. And in their hearts, something dangerous awakened. Hope The council tried to rebuild, tried to hide their defeat. But every word they spoke was drowned by the truth. The galaxy had seen the turning point, and no speech, no command, no threat could erase it. In taverns on distant moons, smugglers told the story. In the void of Orion's edge, the humans faced the council's greatest fleet, they whispered, and they did not break. They did not bow. They burned the stars themselves to win. The tale spread, growing larger with each telling. Soon it was no longer a battle, no longer a victory. It was legend. Children of alien races asked their elders about Earth. Some were told to fear them. Others were told to respect them. But in every voice there was wonder. How had a small world, spared by mercy, risen so high? How had chains become wings? How had weakness become fire? Elias returned to Earth a hero, though he carried no joy in the word. He stood before the people in the great square of New Geneva. Millions gathered, billions watched from across colonies. He spoke not as a conqueror, but as a man who remembered they gave us mercy once, and thought it was the end of our story. He said, "But mercy became our fire, mercy became our strength, mercy became our legend. We did not rise to conquer, we rose to survive, and now no one will ever chain us again." The crowd roared, but behind their voices was something deeper, the understanding that this was not the end, but the beginning. Humanity had stepped into a galaxy that now feared and respected them. The road ahead would be harder, filled with wars, alliances, betrayals. But one truth could never be erased. The legend had been forged, and legends never die, in the halls of the shattered council. Aurealis, the Serati elder who had once spoken, for mercy, sat in silence. She had lived long enough to see her words turn into fire. Mercy creates memory, she whispered to herself, and memory creates legend. Her people asked her if she regretted sparing Earth. She only smiled, though her eyes were heavy with age. "No," she answered, "because in the end, mercy gave the galaxy something it had forgotten, hope." And so the story of humanity spread, a story told in whispers and songs, in fear and in awe, a story of a young race that refused to break, a story of fire born from mercy, a story of survival turned into strength. The galaxy would remember it forever. And whenever a world looked into the stars and thought itself too weak, they would remember Earth. They would remember the spark. They would remember the legend asterisk.